I had the good fortune of recently being introduced to a book written by Ajahn Brahm, and I want to share one thing he said. Whenever you experience pain or difficulty, always remember one of the deep meanings of the word suffering. Asking the world for something it can never give you. If you ask for something the world cannot supply you, you should understand that you are asking for suffering. And I also would like to offer the merit of this Dharma talk to all things, especially all the firefighters, all beings, animals, and plants that have been affected all over the world. Excuse me. And to my Dharma brother Daiji, and 24 other human beings who are awaiting execution on death row in Oklahoma State Penitentiary. Excuse me. I did it. I got it over with. An execution date of October 5th, 2023 has been ordered for Daiji. So please join me in taking the 3 refuges. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. I take refuge in the Sangha. Okay, I got through that. That's good. So the Jataka tales are stories about many of the lives of the Buddha before he became and transformed into the Buddha. And I'd like to read you one that's called The Goat Who Saved the Priest. Once upon a time, there was a very famous priest in a very old religion. He decided it was the right day to perform the ritual sacrificing of a goat. In his ignorance, he thought this was an offering demanded by his god. He obtained an appropriate goat for the sacrifice. He ordered his servants to take the goat to the holy river and wash him and decorate him with flower garlands. Then they were to wash themselves as part of the purification process. Down at the riverbank, the goat suddenly understood that today he would definitely be killed. He also became aware of his past birth and death and rebirths. He realized that the result, He realized that the result of his past unwholesome deeds were about to finally be completed. So he laughed an uproarious goat laugh, like clanging cymbals. In the midst of his laughter, he realized another truth, that the priest, by sacrificing him, would suffer the same terrible results due to his ignorance. So he began to cry as loudly as he had just been laughing. The servants who were bathing in the holy river heard first the laughing and then the crying. They were amazed. So they asked the goat, "Why did you loudly laugh and then just as loudly cry? What is the reason for this?" He replied, "I will tell you the reason, but it must be in the presence of your master, the priest." Since they were very curious, they immediately took the sacrificial goat to the priest. They explained all that had happened. The priest, too, became very curious. He respectfully asked the goat, "Sir, why did you laugh so loudly and then just so loudly cry?" The goat, remembering his past life, said, "A long time ago, I too was a priest who, like you, was well educated in the sacred religious rites. I thought to sacrifice a goat was a necessary offering to my God, that it would benefit others as well as myself of future rebirths. However, the true result of my action was that in my next 499 lives, I myself have been beheaded. While being prepared for the sacrifice, I realized today I will definitely lose my head for the 500th time. Then I will finally be free of all the results of my unwholesome deeds of so long ago." The joy of this made me laugh uncontrollably. Then I suddenly realized the priest were about that you, the priest, were about to repeat the same unwholesome action and would be doomed to the same result of having your head chopped off in your next 500 lives. So out of compassion and sympathy, my laughter turned to tears. The priest was afraid that the goat might be right. So he said, "Well, Sir Goat, I will not kill you." The goat replied, "Reverend priest, even if you do not kill me, I know that today I will lose my head and finally be released from the results of my past unwholesome action." The priest said, "Oh, don't be afraid, my fine goat. I will provide the very best protection and personally guarantee that no harm will come to you." But the goat said, "Oh, priest, your protection is very weak compared to the power of my unwholesome deed to cause its necessary results." So the priest canceled the sacrifice and began to have doubts about killing innocent animals. He released the goat and, along with his servants, followed him in order to protect him from any danger. The goat wandered into a rocky place. He saw some tender leaves on a branch and stretched out his neck to reach them. All of a sudden, a thunderstorm appeared out of nowhere, and a lightning bolt struck an overhanging rock and cut off a sharp slab, which fell and chopped off the goat's head. He died instantly, and the thunderstorm disappeared. Hearing of this very strange event, hundreds of local people came to the place. No one could understand how that had happened. There was also a fairy who lived in the nearby tree. He had seen all that had occurred. He appeared gently fluttering in the air overhead. He began to teach the curious people, saying, "Look at what happened to this poor goat. This was a result of killing animals. All beings are born and suffer through sickness, old age, and death. But all wish to live and not to die. Not seeing that all have this in common, some kill other living beings. This causes suffering also to those who kill, but now and in countless future rebirths. Being ignorant that all deeds must cause results to the doer, some continue to kill and reap up more suffering on themselves in the future. Each time they kill, a part of themselves must also die in the present life, and suffering continues even by rebirth in hell worlds. Those who heard the fairy speak felt they were very lucky indeed. They gave up their ignorant killing and were far better off, both in this life and in the pleasant rebirths. So the moral of this story, it says, even religion can be a source of ignorance. The first teaching that the Buddha gave us is the Four Noble Truths, which are the truth of suffering, which exists, the cause of suffering, the cessation of suffering, and the path of liberation, the Eightfold Path. The cause of suffering is ignorance. Ignorance is the basis of our craving and desires. Whatever we do in life, it contains suffering. If we enjoy pleasures, we are afraid to lose it, and we want more, and we attempt to control it. If we suffer pain, we attempt to avoid it and control it. Somehow, we pattern our life making choices and often do not allow ourselves enough time to even taste the flavor. The Buddha said, dukkha, which is suffering, is our only real spiritual problem. In the Kyojo giving and receiving the teachings of the precepts, Great Master Eihei Dogen in the commentary by Reverend Master Jiyu-Kennett says, harmony is the Sangha treasure. This is brought about by the knowledge that no matter what a member of the Sangha may do, he is immaculate from the very beginning. There is nothing from the first. Thus shall you think of all this fleeting world, a star at dawn, a bubble in a stream, a child's laugh, a phantasm, a dream. Although this is true, All the members of the Sangha, the Zen masters, and all beings are bound by the law of karma. They will pay the price of what they do. This is the mind of the Sangha treasure. Do not worry about the karma of others. Each man his karma makes. So our practice is based on relationship, a relationship between you and nowness. And each of our relationships is different because we're all individual people. But it's all the same too. There is a phrase, Shoshaku, Jushaku, that appears many times in the passages of Great Master Dogen's Shoba Genzo. Shoshaku, Jushaku has been translated into to succeed wrong with wrong, one continuous mistake, and adding error to error. Language is a double-edged sword. Any word cannot be the reality itself, but the reality cannot be expressed and shared with others without using words. We need to use language to express, and by using language, we cannot help but fail to fall short in some way. So Great Master Dogen does not disappoint us with this term here, Shoshaku, Jushaku, which appears its meaning itself is its very opposite. On one hand, when we make a mistake, in order to fix the mistake, we make another mistake, thereby adding error to error. And then on the other hand, when a skilled practitioner makes a mistake and takes advantage of the mistake to make the outcome and future outcomes to be more wholesome. So how do we become skillful practitioners? By doing it. Practice with kindness and compassion for yourself and for others. And wholeheartedly embrace this moment with gratitude as we all walk together on the Noble Eightfold Path. Just let things be. Making mistakes is the key to learning. One who is willing to make mistakes, mistake after mistake, will be corrected until arriving at genuine understanding. In doing so, we create a life that guides us on the path to truth. Through being willing and open to let go, that is how we create room to learn something new. I'd like to make a point of clarification here, and that is even though we make mistakes, we should not endeavor to make the same mistake many, many times, thinking it's all right because we know how to get up. Reverend Master Hubert introduces Shimi, a chapter titled Four Horses in the Shobo Genzo, by writing, "This discourse is based on a widely quoted description of four kinds of trainees when they encounter the Buddha's teaching of impermanence. The four kinds of trainees are likened to the training of four types of horses." And just a side note, impermanence, as all things are impermanent, all things are Buddha nature, and without an independent, fixed existence. That is the essence of being a human being, and the existence of all things. So no permanent owner, no owner-operator, ever-changing and transient. So this is impermanence. This is what these horses are encountering, and this is how they respond. And this is how Great Master Dogen recounts the story of the four horses in short. The best horse runs before it sees the shadow of the whip. The second best horse runs as well, just before the whip reaches the skin. The third horse runs when it feels the pain on its body. The fourth runs only after the pain penetrates the marrow of its bone. This makes it difficult for the fourth horse to learn how to run. Most all of us want to be the best horse. And in Zen training, it does not matter whether you are the best or the worst trainee. As we practice, we discover that we are best and worst at any given time and at different times. So there's lots of room here for us to be the best and the worst. But when we realize the value of finding ourselves being the worst horse because of our very imperfections, that can lead us to growth, to the way-seeking mind. At times, we may evaluate where we are day to day and continually feel we have missed the mark again. The boat left the dock without us, and perhaps frustrated by how we're doing. So to free ourselves from ignorance, it requires us to see the true reality. The true reality of all things is the teaching that each and every unique individual thing can exist as it is only in relation with all other things throughout time and space. This is not something you can figure out in your head. It is form, just as it is. True nature, body, and mind, just as it is. All our daily activities, just as they are. Moving and being still, with joy and sorrow, just as they are. A flower raised aloft and breaking into a smile, just as they are. Mindfulness makes restraint possible. I'm going to repeat that because it's well worth saying again. Mindfulness makes restraint possible. The quality of mindfulness is something that arises from practice, not something learned in a book. Be mindful of what you are feeling. This word feeling does not refer to our emotions, but rather a bare affective tone of experience, whether pleasant, painful, or neutral. Whether we're being stubborn, I'm very familiar with that one, full of worry or anxiety, or just full of ourselves. That one we probably all know. Be mindful and still. Let it be, and you will hear the answer. To live each moment with kind attention makes everything possible. When you intellectualize life, it eventually becomes a dead end. The practice makes it possible to live a life of peace. When we have no particular concrete idea or goal or the idea of what good or bad is, we expose ourselves and accept criticism. We cannot escape ignorance to attain enlightenment because enlightenment is not somewhere else. There's no separation there. So Prince Siddhartha was prophesied to be a great king, a universal monarch. Instead, he became a monk, which I'm so grateful for, who later transformed into the Buddha. The Buddha was a human being and the biological father of Rahula. So his son Rahula was 6 years old when Prince Siddhartha left home to investigate life for himself. And as we know, after trying a variety of ways and limitless eons of training, he became enlightened and transformed into the Buddha. So when Rahula was 7 years old, he became a Buddhist monk and joined his father. At that time, Sariputra was the Buddha's chief disciple and was assigned to be Rahula's teacher. And if I'm understanding the middle-length discourses of the Buddha, where the story came from, Rahula was 18 while on an alms round when the Buddha and Rahula was 18 while on an alms round with the Buddha and his group of monks. So it's said that some unwholesome thoughts were arising in Rahula's mind. The text doesn't say what the thoughts were, and ancient speculation points to one possibility, that Rahula was daydreaming about what his life would be like if his dad had become a great king. Other speculation was it occurred to Rahula how handsome his dad, the Buddha, was. And he started to feel pretty good about how his own physical attractiveness was to him. Maybe Rahula was not thinking any of those, maybe both, and maybe more. A myriad of thoughts appear and abide and pass for all of us. But the Buddha suddenly stopped walking and turned to Rahula. I mean, can you imagine having a parent who can actually read your mind? Well, the Buddha could do this. So Rahula had a tall packing chair, but the Buddha turned to him and said, Rahula, any kind of material form, whatever, whether past, present, or future, internal or external, gross or subtle, inferior or superior, far or near, all material form should be seen as it actually is, with proper wisdom. Thus, this is not mine, I am not this is not myself. And Rahula asked, just form, just material form? And not just material form, the Buddha said, also feeling, perception, volitional formation, and consciousness. So as you might imagine, Rahula felt quite embarrassed to be singled out and admonished right in front of all the other monks while on the alms round. And he thought to himself, now who would go into town on an alms round after you've been personally admonished by the Blessed One? So Rahula turned back and sat in mindfulness meditation under a tree. And when his teacher Sariputra saw this, he came over to him and said, Rahula, develop mindfulness of breathing. When mindfulness of breathing is developed and cultivated, it is of great fruit and benefit. Well, the meditation didn't go so well for Rahula. By evening, I think he must have felt very defeated and dejected, so he went to the Buddha to ask a question. And the question he asked may be a little surprising since he had been a monk and a student of Shariputra for more than a decade. But he asked it nonetheless. Maybe it was just a degree of the frustration he was feeling with where he was currently at. And he asked the Buddha, Venerable Sir, how is mindfulness of breathing developed and cultivated so that it is of great fruit and great benefit? So the Buddha's answer was a set of teachings on the practices to work on beyond mindfulness of breath. The Buddha's answer was a set of teachings on the practice to work on beyond mindfulness of breath. So there's 8 of them. So I'm going to just give them to you and breathe. It's a nice practice package. So the first one is develop attention with high resolution and clarity. And the practice is to attend to the 4 qualities which the mind experiences as phenomenon: earth, water, fire, and wind. Solidity, fluidity, temperature, energy, motion, expansion. And for Rahula, the Buddha prescribed an additional element for meditation: space itself. So practice number 2, which is not self, the Buddha told Rahula, while attending to these elements, each should be seen as it actually is with proper wisdom. This is not mine. This I am not. This is not myself. In other words, train the mind to see things as they really are. That I do not have ownership of any phenomena. I am not identical to any phenomena, and no phenomena is a self. The third practice, equanimity and humility. So beyond attending to the experimental quality of represented by each element, the Buddha asked Rahula to be like the earth. When people throw dirty things such as excrement, urine, piddle, pus, blood, and many other things on the earth is not repelled, humiliated, or disgusted. In the same way, the Buddha asked Rahula to develop meditation that is like the earth. So when you develop meditation that is like the earth, arisen agreeable and disagreeable contacts will not invade your mind and remain. Goes through he gave the same instruction for the other 3 elements of water, fire, and wind. The fourth practice was not to be established anywhere. So the Buddha repeated the same instructions he did for the 4 elements above, but for space he added not to be established anywhere. He said, just as space is not established anywhere, so too, Rahula, develop meditation that is like space. The 5th practice was the 4 sublime states. The Buddha told Rahula to cultivate loving kindness, compassion, altruistic joy, and equanimity. The reason for these practices is to uplift the heart with goodness. loving kindness, compassion, altruistic joy, and equanimity. I think we could all always use a good time to have a good opportunity to uplift the heart with goodness. Practice 6 was not beautiful. The Buddha told Rahula to practice not beautiful or foulness. The practice is to learn to see the body as not beautiful, and thereby slowly become disenchanted with lust. The 7th practice was impermanence. The Buddha said, Rahula, develop meditation on the perception of impermanence. For when you develop meditation on the perception of impermanence, the conceit, I am, will be abandoned. And the 8th practice, full circle, the mindfulness of breathing. He says, yes, back to the basics. The Buddha talked to Rahula again in some detail about the basic practices of mindfulness of breathing. Never forget the basics. So it's said that Rahula practiced this package diligently for approximately 2 years. And one day, the Buddha recognized that Rahula was ripe and ready. So what followed was a short conversation with some profound, concise questions from the Buddha about impermanence and suffering and some of the other topics that are in the 8 practices. And upon hearing what the Buddha said, Rahula gained full enlightenment. So this training package is sufficient for anyone. It works. It's a transforming and healing practice. So I would take the moment to encourage each of you, whether you're new to the practice or been going on it for decades, find a practice package that works for you, or perhaps just update your current package. Go forth consistently with utmost sincerity. And as we know, you can't rely on anything, and you do have the support of all the Buddhas and ancestors, the masters, teachers, and all the members of the Sangha. Call on by Sajaguru Tathagata, and if the journey seems too long, the path too steep to climb, celestial beings will help you find the precious gem, the deeper mind. Being able to enjoy happiness does not require we have no suffering. As I said, there's no separation between happiness and suffering. As we learn to accept, acknowledge, embrace, and understand suffering, we suffer much less. We're able to transform our suffering into understanding, compassion, and joy for ourselves and others. Skillfully engage with both the presence of suffering and the presence of happiness, and stay in touch with what is actually going on. Both suffering and happiness are transitory and ever-changing, impermanent in every moment. And if you know how to make good use of the mud, you can grow a beautiful lotus blossom. It's true. So Reverend Master Hubert, in his translation, the Shoshaku Jushaku, says, it is through making mistakes that we can learn and transmit our understanding. A disciple who is a genuine vessel for the Dharma will persist in making mistakes through misunderstanding what the master is pointing to until he sees where he is wrong, which he can only do by being willing to make mistakes in the first place. It is persisting in our errors and allowing ourselves to be corrected that leads to our understanding. This is an important understanding. This is an important corrective to our fear of making mistakes and being seen as stupid or in error. We should welcome mistakes, for they guide us along the path of genuine growth. So this applies to all of us. We're all human after all. And great Master Dogen makes this clear when he poignantly states in Shobogenzo chapter on Graspable Mind, where he says, it's hard to believe that those ancient revered Chinese masters did not understand this one teaching when they understand so many others. Know that ancient teachers sometimes made mistake after mistake. Capable of understanding in some areas, even while having capable of misunderstanding in some areas, even while having great understanding in others. So when we really understand the problem of suffering, we leave things alone. And we don't worry or be concerned about them. You just sit there, don't involve yourself with what you're experiencing. Just step back. I'm going to try that again. When we really understand the problem of suffering, we leave things alone and not worry or be concerned about them. You just sit there and do not involve yourself with what you are experiencing. Take a step back. So, beautiful or ugly, do not run away from either. Rather, come face to face with them in order to understand them, their true nature. Be aware your mind is desiring. Be aware of what your mind is desiring. It's wanting something. And observe the mind, the nature of the object of desire. And we will see impermanence, selflessness, and interdependentness. There's no room for a me, a my, or a I there. So I encourage you to heal with joy today, be at ease and peace, and allow your mind to become steady and still. Let it be, let it be, let it be, and you will hear the answer. I thank you all so much.